We like to start each weekend morning show off by getting to know one of our listeners. And today we thought it would be fitting to be joined by an early bird who is focused on the night sky. Patrick Johannesson lives in Brandon and has recently snapped a few hundred photos of the Northern Lights. Good morning, Patrick, and happy International Astronomy Day.
Good morning, and thank you.
So those aurora photos you posted on your website are amazing. How long have you been doing this sort of thing?
Well, I've checked, and it's been the first photo that I found on my website from an aurora show was 2012. So, I guess about 10 years.
Oh wow! And
surprised me. I didn't think it was quite that long.
Yeah. So, you're not using a cell phone, are you? You're using some special equipment.
Well, special. It's I've got a Canon DSLR, like the fancy type of camera, I guess you'd call it. And a couple of lenses that I like to use, and I set up on a tripod so that it doesn't shake because I'm usually shooting, each photo usually is open for about 5 to 10 seconds.
Okay. And I understand that one of your photos is recently featured in the Brandon Sun on the front page of the West Man This Week section.
Yes.
How did that make you feel to know that others are enjoying your work?
Oh, it was great. I was quite happy with that. It felt like a bit of an honor, honestly.
So how do you keep track of whether there's going to be aurora in the sky or not?
There's a few things that I do. I used to just use a website called spaceweather.com, and I still consult it. But since in the last few years, I discovered a group on Facebook that has grown immense called Manitoba Aurora and Astronomy, and they've got several guides on how to take photos, how to know that the aurora might be good on any given night. And there's a couple of apps that I have on my phone that give me some details as well. One is called, let me just look them up. One is called Space Weather Live. One is called Aurora Alerts, and they one of them buzzes me when it's a possible good night.
So how much warning do you have? Is it that night, or do you know a day ahead of time?
You get a little bit, like if you're in the Facebook group, the Manitoba Aurora and Astronomy, you'll get they have notices when there's a particularly a good potential. What happens is the sun throws off a coronal mass ejection, a CME, and that's usually what sparks an aurora show. And they take 2 to 3 days to travel to Earth. And if it's aimed directly at Earth, then we kind of have a decent idea that something's coming that might be good. And then sort of the day of, I kind of keep an eye and see if it in fact is going to be a good show. And sometimes we'll get the buzzes starting at like 1 in the afternoon when it's ramping up. But I mean, that's good for Europe, but not so good for here. But then it's kind of like, is it going to last? That sort of thing. So it's hit or miss, but it's better than just going out there and guessing. So when you know it's going to be a good aurora night, what do you do? Well, I'll wait till sunset or once it starts to get dark, and I load up my camera, my tripod, all my stuff in my backpack, and I drive out of town. So I'm looking for a nice dark spot with a view to the north, generally. Okay, because that's where the lights are. So, do you have a special spot that you prefer? I have a couple of spots that I like. There's one northwest of Brandon that has just a couple of pine trees. It's the if you're looking at my photos, that's where I was most recently. And then there's another spot out west of town that has a nice view to the north with a lot more trees in the view. So it's a nice foreground for the lights. Now, is it imperative that you get out of the city and away from the lights, or can you see anything from your own backyard? Generally speaking, you have to be out of town, away from the city lights. Some shows are faint enough that even a full moon is going to compete too much with them. The last couple shows that I've seen in the most recent one on last Sunday was it was intense, and I did notice when I got back to Brandon that I could see it in town. I've got friends who got photos with their cell phones from their back decks in town. But generally, it's been like that was a super strong show. They're not all going to be like that.
Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting because I've lived in the Arctic, where you would think that I would have more opportunity to see the aurora, but I've actually only seen it once or twice because of those city lights.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any other tips for people who might be listening and wanting to view the aurora?
Well, my main tip would be if you're interested, then look into the Manitoba Aurora and Astronomy Group. There's a group of experts there, and they have very good information. They'll point you in the right direction, and they've written up a number of guides on like I said, how to know when something's coming, where to go, how to be safe when you're out there. One of the things that I picked up from there was I bought myself an orange safety vest so that when I'm walking around outside, I'm visible, right? That's the safety is paramount when you're doing this sort of thing because you're in the dark. You're probably on a side road somewhere, and you don't want to get hit. That's a really good tip, and I think maybe some people who might be newer to this might not have thought of that. Well, it wasn't something that I thought about until they mentioned it. It was like, wait a minute, yeah, that would be smart. So. Yeah. And so, Patrick, aurora isn't the only thing that you've photographed in the sky. No. What other kind of things have you taken pictures of? Well, I do like to get the Milky Way if I can. It's more of a summer project because of the angle changes through the year, and in the summertime it's not quite straight up and down, but it's very close. And the more interesting cloud formations are more visible in the summertime as well. The downside is, of course, the sun sets way later, so it's more of a midnight to 2 a.m. project for me. I've also I started out getting a lot of star trails, which you basically aim the camera at a spot and you let it click as long as you can. I've in the past I've set it up in my front bedroom and just let it click all night, and then you assemble you merge the photos together and you see the circles that the stars make as the Earth rotates as they move across the sky. Oh, that's so interesting. It's funny because that reminds me of when I was in university and I took a class called archaeoastronomy, and the instructor made us go outside and the same spot and map the stars every night to see how they would change. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super interesting. What about meteor showers? Well, I've tried. I've gone out for a few of them, and I get one or two meteors on camera, but they're often kind of, I aim at what they call the radiant, which is the point in the sky where they appear to be coming from. But I haven't had a lot of luck capturing them. I've enjoyed watching them, but that's something that I still need to work on. It's always a good time out under the stars, though, in my opinion. Yeah, and how do you balance the desire to take those photos and with the just the passion for seeing the sky and what's happening? Well, the nice thing is that once I've got the camera set up and clicking away, I can leave it for a bit and just stare up at the sky if I want to. And you have some pretty late nights. I have sometimes, yeah. There's I tend to do a week in the summertime when I'm kind of up at a friend's cabin on a bit of a retreat, and I'll go out. There's been times when I've got back to the cabin at 2 or 3 in the morning, just from doing some astrophotography. But I sleep in then. That's not good. Like this morning. I'm glad. So Patrick, where does your interest in the sky come from? When I was a kid, I read a lot of science fiction, which I lay at the feet of my father because he read a lot of science fiction, and so that's what was in the house. And also, I mean, in elementary school, for whatever reason, I gravitated towards the Tom Swift books on the school library shelves, and I'd say science fiction is what kind of made me interested in space, and the fact that we live here on the prairie where so much of the sky is visible. There's not mountains or anything in the way. The only thing that gets in the way is the clouds. So I'd say that's kind of the origin story if you're looking for one. And you actually became a writer of science fiction yourself. How did you get started with that? Well, one day I was reading a book, and I suddenly realized that, somebody had to have written this. I wonder if I could do that. And so I started. In elementary school, there was a push towards creative writing as well. In about grade 3 or 4, one of my teachers she had us do like half-page stories on whatever topic we wanted, and so mine tended to come out science fiction-y. Some Star Trek fanfic back in the day, that sort of thing. But that was the start of it. It was a long, long time before I had anything published, but it's been something that I've been doing for most of my life, I'd say.
And where can people read your work?
I do have some fiction on my website, patrickjohannesson.com, along with, a lot of photos are there too. And my work has also been published in, most recently, Alternate Plains and Parallel Prairies, which were 2 anthologies of Manitoba and prairie science fiction and fantasy.
I have the Parallel Prairies book, and I really enjoyed it because I found it so accessible.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of reading sci-fi, but I really enjoyed that one, and for some reason, So, and I didn't know that your story was in that, so it was a pleasant coincidence to find that out.
Well, there we go.
And so as our early bird, Patrick, you get to choose the first song of the show. And tell us about the song you wanted us to play.
Well, I kind of waffled. I decided if I thought about having sort of a thematic connection to astronomy, but then I decided against it and went with a song called The Shade by Metric. And Metric is a Canadian band that I discovered through, I've got a satellite radio channel that plays Canadian music, and I really, really like the singer's voice and the lyrics that they write. And so The Shade is one of my very favorite songs by Metric.
Awesome. So we're going to play that song for you by Metric. This is The Shade. And thank you so much for being our early bird today, Patrick.
Thank you very much for asking.
And for Patrick, this is Metric and The Shade.